Hey everyone, and welcome back. It's February 25th, 2025.
Oh, wow.
As always, the news cycle is just,
Churning.
yeah, it really is.
A lot going on.
But we are here to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. We're going to sift through the noise and try to get to the real story here.
Exactly.
And I think today's headlines are pretty fascinating. They offer a glimpse into some pretty significant power struggles.
Yeah.
And the role of the media in all of it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's dive right in. We've got this unusual situation at the White House. A federal judge just upheld a ban on the Associated Press
Oh, wow.
from covering certain events.
Yeah.
And the reason is, you're not going to believe this,
Right.
they refused to adopt the term Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico.
Right. It sounds comical at first, but it's really not.
No.
This is about controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
And if you recall, this goes back to President Trump, who has a long history of clashing with media outlets.
Yeah.
He issued an executive order demanding this name change.
And even some outlets that have been traditionally supportive of the president, like Fox News, are criticizing this ban. They're saying it sets a dangerous precedent.
I think they're right. It really highlights the importance of a free press. Even and perhaps especially when it comes to outlets that might generally agree with an administration's policies. We're seeing the judge in this case wrestling with these very concerns. He's acknowledging the potential constitutional issues at play.
Yeah, it's definitely a story we need to keep our eyes on.
Okay.
And speaking of individuals wielding power and making waves, Elon Musk is back in the headline.
Oh, yes, he is.
This time it's in his role leading the Department of Government Efficiency.
He's brought his signature disruptive style to the federal workforce.
Yeah.
He just issued this mandate requiring every single federal employee
Wow.
to document their weekly accomplishments.
Every single one.
Every single one.
Yeah.
And they have until midnight tonight
Oh, wow.
to submit these reports or potentially face termination.
Okay, so a very tight deadline. And I know there's a lot of confusion swirling around this because the Office of Personnel Management sent out emails saying that compliance is voluntary. But at the same time, we're hearing reports of agencies, including the State Department and the Pentagon,
Oh, wow.
advising their employees to ignore the mandate altogether,
Yeah.
citing privacy and security concerns.
It sounds like a very chaotic situation.
It does.
And when you look at Musk's leadership style, both in his past ventures and now in government, it does raise questions about the legality and, frankly, the effectiveness of this approach.
Yeah, for sure. And the backlash goes beyond just employee complaints. There's actually a petition circulating in Canada calling for the revocation of Musk's Canadian citizenship.
Really?
Over 200,000 people have already signed it, which is
That's a lot.
a pretty significant number.
It is. It's interesting because the petition specifically cites Musk's vocal support for some of President Trump's more controversial policies
Yeah.
as a reason for revoking his citizenship. It suggests a growing concern that his actions might run counter to Canadian national interests.
So we had these two seemingly separate news stories, but when you kind of peel back the layers, they both point to these larger themes of power dynamics, the role of media, and how individual actions can have really far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
What's your take on how these themes are playing out here?
Well, what's fascinating to me is how both of these situations highlight a tension
Okay.
between individual power and institutional accountability. You have figures like Trump and Musk who wield considerable influence,
Yeah.
and they're willing to push boundaries, sometimes even legal and ethical ones.
And they're also masters of using media,
Oh, yeah.
particularly social media, to bypass traditional gatekeepers and shape public opinion. It's a very powerful tool that can be used for good or not so good.
Absolutely. And it raises a whole host of additional questions about misinformation, the erosion of trust in traditional institutions, and the very nature of truth itself.
Yeah, we're going to need to take a deeper dive into those questions a bit later. But first, let's shift our focus to the global implications of what's happening here. I mean, Trump's Gulf of America executive order.
Right.
It could be seen as a pretty provocative move on the world stage.
It certainly has the potential to strain relations with Mexico and other countries in the region.
Yeah.
And this raises some really interesting questions about the extent to which a single individual can exert such influence on geopolitical dynamics.
Right. And when you consider Musk's situation with his ties to Canada being challenged, it shows how individual actions can transcend national boundaries and spark international controversy.
It underscores the fact that we live in an increasingly interconnected world where information, misinformation, and opinions are constantly circulating and colliding.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming at times. But that's why it's so crucial to engage in critical thinking and develop strong media literacy skills. We have to be able to discern fact from fiction, evaluate our sources, and form our own informed opinions.
That's really the key takeaway here. These aren't just isolated incidents. They're part of larger trends that are shaping our world. And understanding those trends is essential for navigating the complexities of our time.
And on that note, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back to delve deeper into some of the specific details of these stories.
Sounds good. We'll unpack the potential consequences of both Trump's actions and Musk's mandate, and we'll explore what legal challenges they might face.
We'll be right back.
After a short break. Welcome back, everyone.
So let's unpack some of the potential consequences of these actions, starting with the White House ban on the Associated Press. What kind of legal challenges could this face?
Well, the First Amendment clearly protects freedom of the press, and this ban could be seen as a violation of that right. It's interesting because the judge's ruling, while upholding the ban for now, expressed some hesitation and pointed to potential constitutional concerns.
Right.
That suggests this case could go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Wow, and if it does, it could have major implications for how future administrations interact with the media.
For sure. It could set a precedent for limiting press access, even based on seemingly trivial issues like terminology.
Now, shifting gears to Elon Musk and his work summary mandate, there's already quite a bit of pushback from various agencies. Could this land him in legal hot water as well?
It's certainly possible. The Office of Special Counsel is already investigating whether some firings related to this mandate were illegal.
Oh, wow.
They're looking into whether federal employees were coerced into providing information that could be considered private or sensitive.
And the fact that the Office of Personnel Management initially said compliance was voluntary further complicates matters.
Right. It creates a lot of ambiguity and confusion for employees who are trying to navigate this new directive.
Let's delve a bit deeper into the global implications we touched upon earlier. The Gulf of America issue, while seemingly domestic, could ripple outward in unexpected ways.
Absolutely.
Oh.
It could be interpreted as a sign of U.S. disregard for international norms and agreements, potentially damaging diplomatic relations.
Yeah.
Mexico has already issued a formal protest, and other countries in the region are watching closely.
And it could embolden other countries to make similar unilateral moves, further destabilizing the geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect where one seemingly small action can trigger a cascade of unintended consequences.
And we're seeing a similar dynamic play out with Musk's Canadian citizenship being called into question. It highlights how individual actions can have international ramifications in our hyper-connected world.
It's fascinating because it raises questions about the limits of national sovereignty in a globalized world. Can a country truly revoke citizenship based on an individual's political views or actions that occur outside its borders?
It's uncharted territory in many ways, and the outcome of this case could have implications for citizenship laws around the world.
It also underscores the power of public opinion and activism in the digital age. The fact that a petition started by ordinary citizens could gain enough momentum to potentially influence government policy is remarkable.
It shows that we're not just passive consumers of information anymore. We can actively participate in shaping the narratives and outcomes that affect our lives.
And that brings us back to the importance of media literacy and critical thinking. We need to be able to evaluate information from a variety of sources, identify biases, and form our own informed opinions.
It's not just about being a news junkie, it's about being an informed and engaged citizen.
Exactly. We need to be able to cut through the noise, understand the complexities of the issues at play, and contribute to meaningful dialogue and debate.
And speaking of meaningful dialogue, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the role of technology and social media in all of this.
Oh, absolutely. Both Trump and Musk are masters of using these platforms to bypass traditional media gatekeepers and control their own narratives.
They're able to reach millions of people directly with your messages, often bypassing fact-checking and traditional journalistic standards.
And that raises a whole host of concerns about the spread of misinformation, the creation of echo chambers, and the erosion of trust in traditional institutions.
It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it allows for greater transparency and direct communication. On the other hand, it can be used to manipulate and deceive.
It's a challenge for all of us to navigate this new information landscape responsibly and critically.
We need to develop new tools and strategies for evaluating information in the digital age, and that's something we'll continue to explore in future episodes.
Absolutely. It's a constantly evolving landscape, and we need to adapt our thinking and our approaches accordingly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into these stories, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, first and foremost, it's crucial to recognize that power dynamics are at play in every aspect of our lives, from the White House to the workplace to our online interactions.
And understanding those power dynamics is essential for navigating the complexities of the world around us.
Secondly, the role of media, both traditional and social, is more important than ever before.
We need to be critical consumers of information, always questioning the sources and motives behind what we read and hear.
And finally, individual actions can have far-reaching consequences both domestically and globally.
We have a responsibility to be aware of the impact of our words and actions, and to use our voices and our platforms to promote positive change.
It's not about having all the answers. It's about engaging in ongoing dialogue, critical thinking, and a willingness to learn and adapt.
And that's what we hope to foster here on the Videntis podcast.
We want to empower our listeners to be informed, engaged, and active participants in shaping the world around them.
Yeah, it really is a lot to think about.
It is. And, as news junkies, I think it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day headlines.
Right.
And miss the bigger picture.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we do these deep dives.
Exactly. We want to help you connect the dots, see the patterns, understand the forces that are shaping our world.
And hopefully that understanding empowers you to not just consume the news, but to engage with it critically and even participate in shaping it.
Right.
We've talked about the power of the press, the influence of individuals, and the importance of media literacy.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth emphasizing that this is an ongoing conversation,
Right.
a process of continuous learning and adaptation.
Absolutely. The news cycle never stops.
Yeah.
And neither should our efforts to understand it.
So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with a thought experiment.
I like that.
Okay. If you were a journalist covering these stories, where would you focus your attention? What angles would you explore?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Would you focus on the legal battles?
Yeah.
The political maneuvering? Or the impact on ordinary people?
Right. Would you delve into the historical precedents, the ethical considerations, or the role of technology in shaping these events?
Yeah. There are so many layers to these stories,
There are.
and each perspective offers valuable insights.
Absolutely.
But the key takeaway here is that these aren't just isolated incidents.
Right.
They're part of larger trends that are shaping our world. Trends that we need to be aware of and engage with.
For sure.
Because ultimately, it's up to us as informed and engaged citizens to shape the future we want to see.
Well said.
So keep questioning, keep learning, keep challenging assumptions, and keep having those crucial conversations.
Couldn't agree more.
That's how we make progress. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the news.
And until next time, stay curious.